Okay, good morning, everyone. A little bit of a late start this morning, some technical difficulties. It wasn't because of the hockey game going 5 periods of overtime last night. So thank you for your patience, and we'll begin by calling this meeting to order at 9:13. 9:11? Oh, 9:11. Okay, this electronic meeting is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to confirm that all members of this committee are present and that we have quorum. There's no one being absent at this time. I'd like to also confirm that the CAO clerk and other members of our senior management team and staff are present. The public input on this agenda was invited at TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca. We did not receive any emails. The motions today have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite this meeting. And members shall physically raise their hands until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk, and this is not considered a recorded vote. So with that housekeeping done, I would ask, simply indicate that there is no supplementary agenda for today's meeting. And I would ask now if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest from our committee members. Okay, not hearing any, not seeing any. There are no invited delegations today, so I'm going to move right to item number 5 on our agenda, which is Public Works. Director of Public Works, Ken Becking, is going to speak to us on the Portage Landing Park. Thank you. Ken?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The report before you is simply an information report. There's no action required. As committee is aware, the contract or the developer is required to restore the Portage Landing property to its pre-existing condition in accordance with the approved plans. We were advised by the developer that in fact they did try and tender out the work and were unsuccessful in securing a contract with a contractor that was capable of fully completing the works. So they're going to be retendering and with a view to having the work still complete by the deadline of June 30th of 2021.
Okay, thank you. Committee, questions, thoughts, observations on this report? Councilor Nishikawa. Councilor Nishikawa, I see your hand is up. Are you muted?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm really concerned that the $200,000 that we have with hopes that this park will be developed, I suspect that it's very, very shy. And I'm concerned that this developer may walk and will be left holding. And I'm not sure if there needs to be some further consideration about that. I can't even imagine them putting a set of stairs down in the park without, you know, in my cases where I have to hire contractors for to do this type of work for other customers, 200,000 is not going to cut it. So I'm really concerned that these guys are going to walk. What do we do about that?
Okay, good, thank you. I'm not sure either Director Becking and or the CAO may want to speak to that. Either?
Mr. Chairman, at this point, there is an agreement between the parties, and we have to allow that agreement to run its natural course. When and if we arrive at that situation, we will have to address it at that time. But you don't have the ability at this point to start negotiating a new agreement.
Thank you. I wonder if we might ask, when would the next milestone be? Is there a consideration for some sense of an update from Swift River as of, I don't know, April 1st in terms of their intentions to arrive back at the site, seeing as how it's township property? I would imagine there would be ongoing dialogue throughout the winter. Is that the case?
My next contact with them, quite frankly, will be sometime in the latter part of August, just to find out where they're at. And if there's a need for further updates, I'll provide that to committee in September.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, good. Thank you, Ken, and we'll move on. Item 6A, Derek Hammond, our CAO, will speak on a proposed legal policy. Derek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. At a previous council meeting, staff had committed to preparing a policy which indicated where and when staff would be reporting to council in closed session with respect to legal proceedings. In particular, there was interest of council in ensuring that matters relating to Provincial Offences Act offences were included in the policy. Staff have prepared the policy. It has been reviewed by Solicitor Polak, and the policy is here before you today for consideration to advance it to council. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I'm going to ask our committee to have some observations here. What are your thoughts on this report as submitted by our CAO? Wow, no comments. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read this motion moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the legal proceedings direction policy be approved. All those in favor, show of hands. Good, thank you, unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Derek. Okay, report from the clerk's assistant on a proposed license agreement. Is that Terry?
Yes, I'm here.
Terry Guthrie?
Can you hear me?
Item 6B.
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. My video.
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, Councillor Zavitz does not have his speaker on, I think, because
Okay.
when Derek was speaking, so you might want to turn your
So
speaker.
that's full speaking.
I apologize. My video doesn't want to work for some reason this morning. So, but it's pretty straightforward. The Brooks have applied for a license agreement for a dock. Staff have no objections. It would be $600 a year for the first 5 years and renegotiated thereafter. We would require $2 million liability insurance, and the applicants, as usual, are responsible for all survey and legal costs. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Committee? This is your opportunity. Okay, Councillor Hayes has a comment.
I'm just looking at the picture that you provided, and it looks as if they don't have any riverfront frontage at all. And I'm just wondering how the dock could have been built when it looks as if they have no frontage at all.
You are correct. They do not own any waterfront frontage in that area. I've spoken with the building department. If a dock is under 108 square feet, they don't require a building permit for it. I do know that the development services coordinator has looked at it and had indicated that It could have originally also been a dock that was situated many, many years ago. And many, many years ago, we did just allow those things to be put in place as they weren't significant. But now with today's liabilities, we need to address them when they come to our attention to make sure we're not, or to make sure that we are covered should something happen. That's why we would enter into a license agreement.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, good, thank you. I'm going to move this resolution, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the application for a license agreement to legalize an encroachment situated on a portion of an original road allowance lying between lots 10 and 11, concession D, Medora, submitted by Carol Brooks et al., Roll 7-8-015, is approved in accordance with Township Council Policy C-LS-07. All those in favor, show of hands. That's carried. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Okay, we have a report now on reading support of the Township of Tay resolution regarding International Joint Commission and lake water levels. Is that Cheryl?
That would be myself. Thank you.
Cheryl Hollows, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Zavitz. We received correspondence from the Township of Georgian Bay regarding support for the Township of Tay resolution requesting that the province of Ontario and the government of Canada intervene with the International Joint Commission to better manage and control lake levels as set out within the IJC mission statement.
Councillor Zavitz, could you turn off your microphone?
Council and Councillors Nishikawa and Hayes requested that this matter be brought forward to this meeting to see if there's any interest in support. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Comments? Okay, good. With that, I'll move a motion moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the Township of Muskoka Lakes support the resolution passed by the Council of the Township of Tay on May 27, 2020, and supported by the Township of Georgian Bay on July 14th, 2020, with respect to the International Joint Commission and the Great Lakes water levels. All those in favor, show of hands on the screen. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Carried. Thank you, Cheryl. Our Director of Financial Services has a report, item 6D, regarding the Q2 financials. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. So last month, I reported to the committee that I would bring forward regular quarterly financial reports for review and discussion, and to ensure that the committee and council and the public are able to know the status of the township's performance relative to its budget. And today I'm presenting my first report to the committee for the 6 months ended June 30th. So the structure of the presented report shows June year-to-date balances, the annual approved budget, the amount and percentage of that amount of budget remaining for use for the duration of the year, and a comparative column for the same period last year, 2019. On page 2, there's a summary that shows revenue earned to date, which is in the amount of $13,754,219, which represents 82.3% of our total annual revenue. That number is very high for the midpoint of the year, but does include all interim and final tax billings, which were issued prior to June 30th. If we exclude the municipal levy portion, the amount of reported revenues is $1,476,921, which is 1/3 of the annual budgeted revenues for other tax, non-tax revenue and transfers from reserves. This lower revenue is mainly due to the impact from COVID-19 through the penalty deferral decision that was made by council to defer penalties on tax payments on interim bills to July 31st, and decreased service utilization due to facility closures in the township. There are more details on the revenue results on page 4, and it's broken down by department. In the lower part of the summary, report shows expenses to June 30th of $7,686,277, which represents 46% of the total approved annual expense, with 54% remaining for the year. I would highlight that extraordinary costs accumulated to date and related to COVID-19, totaling $47,215 for items such as the purchase of PPE or sanitizer or other related costs, are not included in these expenses. These expenses are being captured in a special account outside of our reported summary today, pending receiving notification from the provincial government of any funding that may be provided to cover these costs. Once that decision is received, the expense groupings, these will be incorporated into the expense report. The groupings that the expenses are shown in this table on page 2 are consistent with the summary presentation that is provided in our audited financial statements, but there are details broken out by division on page 6 of the report today. Just with respect to capital, on page 7, there's a table that shows the status of spending to June 30th against the approved capital budget. To date, we have expended 30% of our capital budget, and investments are expected to continue to accelerate through the remainder of the year as proposals and tenders are received. And on page 8, there is a table that shows the status of our current reserves. Regular entries are being made to reflect transfers to the reserve accounts, which are included as department expenses, and then draws will be picked up as we progress through the remainder of the year with respect to funds needed to be drawn from the reserves. In general, staff are receiving regular reports of their department accounts and are evaluating specific actions that can be taken for the duration of the year to mitigate and offset revenue shortfalls and or cost pressures. Prudence with respect to discretionary spending is a key in-year strategy that will guide us through the rest of the year, and a more fulsome review and forecast of revenue and expenses to year end will be part of activities required as we move forward into Q3. And with that, I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Mark. We were not asked to be gentle with the new guy, so I'm going to call on Councillor Kelly right away for a thought.
This is going to be gentle. Through you, and thank you. Terrific job. Really, really good. Timely, which is really key. Great disclosure, easy to read. The narrative, answered all the questions before you could ask them. So I just want to thank you for this. It's really helpful.
Good, thank you. Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you. I too will try to be gentle. Mark, I agree. I think you've got a good start here. It was your last sentence that caught me. That was going to be my first question. I don't see a projection to year end, but I understand from your comments we'll see that in the next quarter. Is that correct? Because if you look at the revenue and expense summary on page 2, you'll see there's no indication of where we might end at the end of the year. So I understand it's coming in the next phase, but in the future, will that be there at this point in time also?
Thank you, Chair. So I would absolutely feel that a forecast is a critical part of our financial reporting. And as we go forward, that will be part of our exercise in terms of not just reporting where we've been, but where we expect to be as we move forward.
And the second part to that is then I assume at some point you'll be introducing variance reports, which indicate areas where we're over or under budget. Is that also your intention as part of that analysis?
So Chair, just to clarify the question, so is that with respect to a budget to the period that we're reporting for? We currently do not have calendarized budgets, but it is something that I think would be very helpful and was a part of why I included the comparator to last year to help kind of guide that discussion around variances.
Yeah, by the way, Mark, this is not a criticism, but this idea of reporting percentages spent, that doesn't do anything for me. I'm used to where you say, this is what we said we were going to spend, and this is what we've done so far, and here's where I'm projecting we'll be at the end of the year. And So that then pops out the variances. And by the way, you have done a great job for the short time you've been here. I was just looking forward to that going forward. I also had comments that I was going to make on the reserve funds, but I'm going to leave them until you do your next report, because I think you've got a good start here. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, Councillor Bridgman, comments?
Thank you, Chair. And I also am so delighted to see this coming forward for us. And I have a question for you, Mr. Donaldson, and it may be the same as Councillor Jaglowitz was asking. But in your report going forward, can we get a to-date budget column, not just the annual budget column, so we can see where we are each month? Is that going to be part of your report?
So thank you, Chair. So the budget has been prepared historically. It's not been calendarized, as I would call it, where you have an amount allocated to each month.
Oh.
We could do a simple divide by 12, but that's not necessarily appropriate for all lines that have perhaps some seasonality to them. But it's certainly an approach that I would look to incorporate into our 2021 budget for sure, to try to get a little bit more of that ability to compare results to the budget as at a certain date, as was mentioned by Councillor Jaglowitz as well. I come from that way of reading reports as well, and certainly we'll endeavor to move us towards that type of reporting.
So supplementary then, our new software, I'm assuming that that's going to make it fairly easy to be able to do that with the new software that's going in?
Yes, and to the Chair, yes, and that absolutely, it is part of that functionality, and that's how we're going to try and build that in for 2021.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Work in progress, excellent. I'm going to call on Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Keller. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great report, and I think we're moving in the right direction for sure. I just hope when the comment was made about monthly reports, I was on a council for many years. Our council would examine every month. Everything was literally a box of pencils purchased. I hope we're not going in that direction, because that is a really negative way for a municipality to operate, in my opinion. So I'm really grateful for this information. I don't know that I need to necessarily analyze things on a monthly basis. A quarterly is good for me. But again, just from historic reasons, I would say, because we get really, really picky about silly things that are we feel silly things, but in fact, that duct tape is needed by the roads department. Just saying. So hopefully we're not going to ever, like as a council, that we're not looking at it from that perspective. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Councillor. And I wonder, Mark, again, as a work in progress, if you would take some of these comments under advisement for Q3 and perhaps contemplate in your report some of those aspects discussed today. I would call on Councillor Kelly now for his comment.
Thank you, and through you. And first of all, just a response to Councillors Bridgman and Jaglowitz. The thing we have to be careful about with monthly budgeting is that will be our responsibility. Right now, doing a budget on an annual basis has its own challenges. To then be asked to go down and break the budget down monthly will be a big issue. I'm sure it's no problem to pull expenses monthly. It's just we have nothing to deck it against since we do our budgeting on an annual basis. And a real quick follow-up to Councillor Nishikawa, I absolutely agree. We can't get into the minutia and counting pencils and justifying every nickel and dime. I don't think, I hope nobody wants that. That's it.
Good, thank you. I'm going to call on Councillor Hayes, then back to Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, through you. I agree with Councillors Kelly and Nishikawa. I think quarterly is a good way to keep track of our expenses. And just touching on something that Councillor Jaglowitz said, that he really wasn't interested in the percentages. I do look at the percentages. That's probably the first place that I look. So now you have one that doesn't and one that does. So thank you very much.
So it goes. Thank you. Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you. I just wanted to maybe clarify what I said. What I'm looking for is, if you go to page 2, it's called a revenue expense summary. And I'm only really interested initially in that one page. And that one page tells us what we budgeted, what we spent, and what we project will be at year end. And I know that sounds very simplistic, but you can't project where we're going to be at year end unless you have some idea of where we are relative to the budget at this time. And I know that is a challenge. So I'm not asking for the box of pencils and all the detail. It's merely highlighting the areas. Like in the past, we've never actually matched things to the budget. In fact, when we do our next year budget, we rarely know the results of the previous year. And I'm hoping that will end, and we will know ahead of time when we're going to be over budget, and we'll do something about it. So I think it's misunderstood. I think I also agree monthly isn't necessary, but unless staff is doing it monthly, they can't manage it. And I took from the director's comments that staff are getting monthly reports to show them where they are so they can manage it on our behalf. And all they have to report to us is where there's a problem coming up. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And before I call on Councillor Bridgman and give Mark Donaldson the last word, if you will, I would ask the CAO would like to make a comment. Derek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity, I think that Councillor Jaglowitz hit the nail on the head. I think Mr. Donaldson's plan is to ensure that department heads have information, timely information each month. And I believe he's previously indicated his plan is to report quarterly to council on results. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgman. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you. Just to clear it up, I'm not looking to count pencils. I am used to seeing the reports structured like that from before. So it was a simple question on what I'm used to seeing. Quarterly reports are fine with me. And so I just didn't want you to get worried about the fact that I might be digging into the weeds or hoping to do that. Thanks, thanks, Chair.
Good clarification. And if I don't see any other hands up, I would perhaps create an environment, Mark, where you are certainly welcome to perhaps put a fine point on your report. If not, that's fine.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you. And I think the attempt is the report is to capture a large amount of financial information in a very concise manner. And I take the points made absolutely, and I'm very open to making changes to the report to make it more reader friendly.
Good, thank you. Well done. Okay, so we're going to move on then to item 7A on our agenda, which is the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee meeting minutes dated August the 8th. So I'm going to call on Chair Ruth Nishikawa of the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee for that report.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to ask if other councillors have any questions on this report. I would say that it is only a very blush of the discussions that have happened at our Trails Committee. And actually, I just look forward to any questions or concerns from other councillors at this time. Oh, and also please address them to Councillor Roberts as well, because his perspectives is a little slightly different than mine, and welcomed.
Good, thank you. Committee, any thoughts, comments on that? I know we're going to be speaking on the Torrance Barrens aspect to Parks and Trails later at council, so I know we're all looking forward to that. Any other thoughts on that? Otherwise, we'll accept the minutes as submitted. Thank you. And that being said, I'm going to move to, I guess, number 9, unfinished business. I'm not aware of anything on the record, so we'll move on into 10A, which is new business, District Municipality of Muskoka update. So I think that was a slight change in terms of format. So whoever would like the floor, Mayor?
Thank you. Just for an update, we didn't have a public works meeting, went through our district council. There's lots of moving parts going on right now at District Council. Council here would probably be aware our CAO is retiring, or not retiring, he's leaving downtown District of Muskoka and moving on to a new opportunity so that he can be with his soon grandchild and spend some more family time. He originally, when he took the job here, had planned sort of spending about 5 years, but he's been here about 7. So he will certainly be missed. We have a committee at the district that is going to interview for new CAOs. Mr. Hammond has promised he's not applying for the job, and which we're thankful for. Anyway, so that's an ongoing process. We probably won't be able to announce a hiring until sometime in September, and we'll probably end up with an interim CAO for a couple of months at the district level. So that's happening. We've got a number of AMO delegations coming up next week with our fellow municipalities here, health services funding, on and on. The one thing I will advise council on, and it's going to come up a little bit tomorrow or this afternoon, I guess, as well, with another resolution. So was it 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, myself, Graydon Smith, and Graydon couldn't be there, but also Mayor Terziano, the 3 municipalities that were impacted by flooding and emergencies last year, finally had the opportunity to meet face-to-face or through Zoom call with Minister Urich from the MECP, and then also Minister Yakubuski from the MNRF to talk about water levels across our watershed. I have to say it was the most receptive meeting I've seen from the MNRF in my tenure sitting around this council table. And basically the comment was, if we have the ability to request an amendment to the MRWMP, and as such, today's resolution or this afternoon's will just highlight that we've actually sort of made that request, but we flagged them to a couple of different ideas. And I can share later on with council, I guess, the entire presentation that I took them through about the watershed. So it was a positive meeting, and moving forward, I think that's about it. I will comment again, we do have, as people know, we've had solid waste issues across the district. And what we've done district-wise, we've actually hired Mid-Ontario as well as GFL to supplement days when our current contractor, Waste Connections Canada, could not meet their commitments to us. They have major driver shortages. So we have added additional trucks from other companies because that contractor continues to let us down. And that'll be the topic of potentially some closed session items at Engineering and Public Works next Wednesday afternoon. And I think that covers off what's gone on. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. And as our representative at district relating to Public Works, the waste question, there are both Councillor Roberts and Ishikawa would offer commentary. Are we out of the woods with this in terms of regular? Let's just talk about regular weekly waste management. It just seems that it's by week. There's any number of challenges, and it's perhaps locally, regionally, throughout our township and beyond. Can you speak to that, or is this a?
Yeah. So as simple as I can say this, number one, we're not out of the woods yet. And we will see some service disruptions probably throughout the balance of this summer. We have a contract with Waste Connections Canada to deliver a service. They have admittedly said we cannot deliver that service, and hence the reason we have additional contractors to supplement. The problem is we will not find out from until the day that this route is going to be missed, and we don't have trucks just sitting on standby to go to X route or Y route, and drivers somewhat need to be semi-trained on routes, but they will typically follow up the following day, and that's what the additional is. So we're trying to mitigate those. My comments at District Council, our Public Works staff, many of you have interacted with Director Stephanie Mack, who is working overtime. She will respond on weekends, holidays, you name it. is truly involved with this. So I anticipate that we're going to have some more issues for the coming weeks, but we will be trying to resolve this certainly going forward. And if you read between the lines, this will be the subject of some closed session items at the district.
Thanks for taking that hot seat. I'll move on to Councillor Roberts. You have a comment here?
Yes, a question, more of a question. Thank you, Chair. I would want to talk about the lakeside island garbage pickup and request that the district delegate very soon to council or the general committee on the success of this pilot. And also the word pilot, I think, is a bit misleading, because I don't think any of us see afternoon pickup of island waste or parks and docks. So maybe insight on where they stand with the master plan or the plan for the removal of the 98 dumpsters. So I don't know who I asked for that, but I think it's coming up near time that we need an update.
If I may, through the chair, thank you, Councillor Roberts. This is a continuous moving target. We have had some discussions with the MECP and their policy staff. Minister York was not able to attend the meeting, but his staff certainly were there and heard our concerns regarding the ministry direction to remove the bin sites. In some areas, like Parker's Marina, it's the property owner who said, we don't want the bin sites anymore. So there is a master plan, if you will, that is being developed. It is not landed. We do not have finalized anything. We are supposed to submit our recommendations in a master plan by the end of this calendar year to the ministry as to how we're going to remove all the bin sites. We're asking the ministry for some other potential alternatives to help us through this. We have not got that information back. So I would anticipate that in September, maybe as late as October, once the pilot's done, once we understand solid waste this year, that the district will be able to wrap their head around the pros and cons of the pilot, at which point consultation to all 6 lower tier, actually I'm going to say 5 because Lake of Bays doesn't have any bin sites, but to 5 municipalities as to how we plan on going forward. And public consultation will be involved with that at the same time. We are really under the scrutiny of the MECP. And again, that's also a subject of a delegation at AMO this next week.
Good, thank you. I'll call on Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Gord basically brought up what my concerns, and certainly recently people may have seen a petition from folks from 9 Mile. And again, if you know the geography of our municipality, pretty far distance for people to go from 9 Mile to get to garbage. So they developed the petition, which I was grateful for, but I would suggest that district is not being very communicative, I'll say. There's a lot of panicking going on because in fact, we're not having discussions. We're not really letting the public know even what may happen, or just saying perhaps something we might get some kind of report in a year from now or whatever that is, doesn't kind of cut it to a resident. And I'm not sure, certainly it wouldn't be me that can craft the words to communicate with folks on this, but I would hope that not only the district staff, but also our own municipal staff have some kind of an ability to send out a message in a clear way, that people have an understanding that they should not be panicking every single time they take a garbage bag to their bin site.
Thank you. I wonder, as the Chair of Public Works for the district, Mayor, if you could comment on that, or is there, you feel you have?
So I guess the problem is if we don't know what we're going to say to people, it's difficult to provide a solution that we haven't landed yet. And the alternatives that were on the table right now is, sorry, you've got to put your, as the ministry said, certain bin sites are coming out. And the only alternative is you put the garbage in your car and you drive 45 minutes or half an hour to a transfer station. That is the fundamental reality. From a communication perspective, in my mayor's newsletter in January, and I believe even last fall or last summer, there was a communication piece that told anybody who uses bin sites, and there's been signage up at the bin sites before they were removed, to register with Engage Muskoka and start to get information on what's happening with your bin site. So we've asked people to, voluntarily give up their email address, and that when things happen, we can forward that information off. Not everybody has done that, and I think that's where some of the issues are. And frankly, again, I'm not satisfied the ministry's given us additional alternatives. So hence the reason we're pushing back on the ministry to find that, because the only thing they've told us is they're gone and people have to drive to a transfer station. We can't just build a transfer station because the ministry, it's not under our environmental compliance certificate. So we're kind of caught in the middle, and solid waste can only be dealt with certain ways under the ministry. And they've given a directive, and it's kind of like mom and dad, you got to follow them or leave home. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Roberts has a thought.
Thank you. I think I've communicated this before, but I'm going to restate it, is that people don't like to receive unwanted news. This project, and it is a project, is filled with the potential for bad news to some residents. I would get the Public Works Director or Chair to encourage the district to employ a CPM from who really understands change management, does not have to understand waste, does not have to understand garbage, but understands communication and can communicate the correct message or coach staff on how to do that. So that's just my input. I think because of the significance of this and the constituents we're dealing with, they need to improve their communication.
Good, thank you. And I would ask the mayor to ensure, as in his role as chair at the district, to carry that message forward. I must say, Stephanie Mack has been amazing. I've reached out to her a number of times because it seems like everyone that voted for me on 9 Mile Lake loves to use my phone number. And this is a very prickly issue, very divisive. People don't like to have services taken away. The perception is they don't have that many, and then we take this away. And so I think it's a matter of replacing the candy cane with the popsicle. Instead, we just took it away and said, see you later. And I know it's not that simple, Mayor, I appreciate that. But I do think communication is the key here, and many are voicing their concerns, thus petitions, et cetera, that it's not being communicated. Not so much a solution, but where we are right now, even as in an interim piece, where are we? Here's why it's happening. And I think that's important. So, okay, given that, I'm going to move on to Councillor Frank Jaglowitz in terms of his district update. Frank, do you have one? Or
yeah, yes, thank you. I'm just trying to get my video back on. Every time I turn my sound on, I lose my video. Anyway, yes, actually I attended 3 meetings since our last council meeting. First one I'll deal with is finance and corporate services on July 23rd. And at that meeting, as is customary, we set guidelines to staff for the preparation of next year's budget. And that's something that I assume that we will be doing, this council will be doing in the very near future. So there's three types of budgets at the district. One is water and wastewater, and that was recommended a 3.9% increase, which was accepted. Solid waste, which you just talked about, they asked for 5.2%. There was a lot of nattering on it. It got down to 4.7 at one, recommended even going lower, but ended up back at 5.2. The third part is the tax supported budget, which is the biggest one and the one we pay a good share of. Staff asked for 4.1. That was reduced to 3%, which was the same number as last year, and due in large part to Chairman Klink initiative, which I agreed with. Interesting enough, there was also a report on the Muskoka Futures thing. That's been fully subscribed. 3 million, they've got applications for 3 million funds at 121 applications. So then moving on to council, there were 2 council meetings last month, and the reason is the AMO conference is coming up. So the one that's normally after us was ahead of us on August 10th. Just to give you some background, before a couple of months ago, and I'm talking about the approval of resort condominiums, this approval had been a couple of years ago, the delegation to staff had been withdrawn. And so that subject came up as I reported to you last time, that the planning district committee had recommended that be changed and that only new applications come to the committee, the rest be delegated to staff. As you recall, we dealt with this at our last council meeting and sent a resolution to district council. That resolution was, I sent that resolution to the clerk to have it addressed, but in between that and the time it was discussed, a revised resolution was submitted by someone, I guess staff. That was discussed. I was shown as the mover of that motion, which I had never moved, and it was ultimately passed. And that again did not fulfill exactly what we asked for. It left any resorts that are subject to an LPAT appeal 100% with staff. It did have that the CAO would consult with council, but there was no, the approval authority remained with staff. Then on August 10th, a short while ago, the minutes to that meeting came forward, and I requested that those minutes be corrected. They showed me as the mover of that motion, and I had not. And there was some lengthy discussion on that. The end result is that the district cannot change its minutes, so therefore it agreed to include the conversation in this month's minutes. Anyway, so that's my report. Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you. Ruth Nishikawa, Councilor Nishikawa.
Sorry, before Ruth goes, can I just make a quick comment?
Please do.
Okay, sorry. Just as a point of reference for council, it wasn't, and to Councillor Jagwitz's perspective, from a procedural clerk's perspective, we put motions on the floor. And then what happened was there was an amendment that was moved and seconded, and that got approved. So Councillor Jagwitz's motion, though it was his original motion, was an amended motion, not as such a new motion. It had different words, but it was considered an amendment at the time. So just as a point of clarification for everybody.
Councillor Jagwitz, comment?
Yes, actually, the fact is that the motion that I put forward, which was not my motion, it was the motion that this council had approved, it was never discussed. As I was speaking to the motion, I assumed I was speaking to that. As I was speaking, a totally different motion was displayed on the screen. I then said, what is that? I asked for the motion I put forward to be displayed. It was displayed quickly and then removed from the screen. The motion that this council put forward was never discussed.
Well, that's concerning in a number of areas, a number of fronts. I'm not quite sure where to go with that.
If I may help, Councillor Zavitz, Councillor Jagwitz's and I may have a different opinion. Just council had a different opinion as well. Councillor Jaglowitz, our council resolution was put on the screen as a motion, and then it was discussed because it was confusing, if we remember, as we word crafted that at our township council and made amendments to it. The intent, in my opinion, I believe also Councillor Nishikawa's opinion, who sits around that table, and Councillor Everett's opinion, the intent of that original motion as it was revived was a little bit more clear. That was my perspective on the amended motion, that it made things a little bit more clear at district council. That's all. And we can debate this later, not for today.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm not sure this is the venue, but I did see Councillor Nishikawa shaking her head. And I do see that Councillor Jaglowitz is asking to speak again. So I may, well, I'll probably come back to you, Mayor, as the last comment, but Councillor Jaglowitz?
Thank you. I don't think it's necessary for us to go back and forth. It's quite clear that the motion that this council passed was never read out. It was never put on the table to be discussed. In its place was a substitute motion, which I believe we were informed it came from staff. And that motion, I was named on that substitute motion. My name was printed on it as the mover, and Mayor Harding's name was the seconder. The problem here is that because we're in COVID, as you know, names are randomly applied. And so when this came up at the council meeting earlier this week, it was explained that my name was just put on randomly. Well, I don't buy that, because it just so happens that that motion had my name on it and the mayor's. So Mr. Chair, I'd appreciate if you could just leave it there. Oh, sorry, I'm happy to hear from other councillors, but I think the mayor and I should maybe rest at this point and let other councillors.
Yeah, and fair enough. I didn't want to hear your words. Before I call on Councillor Kelly, I might just put our clerk on the spot, and maybe this is incorrect of me at this point. As it relates to a motion put forward by council, which was, I believe it was a unanimous, it probably was a unanimous motion to go to the district. I'm very concerned that the perception is that the motion that we put forward to the district didn't get read did not get submitted as it was to the district. If that's the case, and I'm not sure we've proven that. I'm concerned by that.
That's not correct. I think not.
Okay, so I'm going to ask our clerk, Cheryl Mortimer, to perhaps shed some light on that. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. So the resolution that was passed by this municipality was forwarded by email to the district municipality of Muskoka. The motion was sent in as was passed.
I suppose that's, if that's the last word, and I suppose it is. I'll call on Councillor Kelly for his insight.
Well, and thank you, through you, Chair. I have more questions than I do answers, because quite frankly,
Right.
I guess my understanding was, to the extent that this body passes a resolution for reference onto the upper tier, that it's our resolution would be packaged and submitted as passed, and Madam Clerk has confirmed that that was the case, and that it would be put on the floor for debate or discussion in exactly the same format. Now, I mean, I'd be willing to accept corrections on typos, for instance, or structure or format, but if it's changed the intent of it, then the will of council from the last meeting, which called for a specific resolution to be put to the district, doesn't appear to have been followed. And so I guess, I mean, I'm talking about a lot of stuff I don't know anything about. What I think I need to do, or what we should probably do, is have a look at the resolution that was put on the floor, and I assume it was adopted by the district, and read it against that which we asked to have submitted, and find out if there's a big variance, in which case I don't understand why we bother passing resolutions if they just get manipulated and handed around, to suit somebody else's agenda.
If I may comment, I'm going to encourage us to all who want to comment on this to review the tape from the district. And you will see resolutions put on the table and the amended resolution. I can tell you, in my opinion, the resolution as it was presented was too confusing and district council would not have passed it. The amendment made for a more clear resolution of the intent of Muskoka Lakes. And it was an amendment because we voted on the amendment first and then passed the resolution as amended. Again, I encourage everyone, we will send out a link and a time frame to watch the tape. That's the best I can suggest at this point, and we can move on.
Okay, I think based on that commitment, I think we'll all as council look forward to receiving that tape, and I suppose that corroboration of the actual, the facts of what did occur. And perhaps we should move on based on that. I know that there are some councillors that have their hands up. But I think as chair, I might just ask that we move on from this point now. We know that we're going to be receiving more information on it, and let's, I would hate to see this go 30 more days, but I would ask that this be dealt with dispatch, and that we are in receipt of these, this information at someone's earliest convenience. Okay, so I'm going to call on Ruth Nishikawa for any district committee information.
Thank you. Just as a, before I get into health services, I, along with Frank, I voted against it. It's interesting because I'm suggesting this because we're on Zoom meetings all the time. Everything just gets, that's passed. There's not a question anymore. Is there anyone against? And very concerning, because I mean, it happened twice for me, yesterday's meeting or meeting previous. And it's very concerning because in fact, it's difficult to voice your concerns through a vote when your vote is not acknowledged. So moving forward from that, health services, we are actually going to be having our first real meeting since COVID. I think everyone knows that we're very busy, both the paramedics and I think everyone's been out being tested and that type of thing. So they of course are involved with that. And we're trying to work through the logistics and a whole bunch of challenges that go with the Fairburn redevelopment of the long-term care home. And primarily, I think we're going to be having budget challenges with this particular build. I'll just say that in the month of September, I would be able to give you a better report, but certainly from that we are also looking at budget documents or discussions at this time. That's my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I must say too, to chime in here once again, you are our voice at the district, and we've discussed the district and its engagement at our strategic planning sessions. We will continue to, and I implore all of you to amplify your voice, please, and thank you. Alan Edwards, any comments from you on the district?
Okay, thank you. I'll just keep it fairly short. There was an update for early years childcare update. The 5-year transportation needs and growth was brought forward, and there will be a bus service running through from MacCheer through Port Carling and in through the Bracebridge and then back up through some of Lake of Bays to Huntsville. It's about a 2-hour round trip, and that's so it's being started. There's another one from Valor going down in through Gravenhurst as well. So that is something that's new, and of course The corridor 11 gets most of the action because that's where everyone is. The housing, a threshold for home values, they've said affordable housing now is basically $435,000, and it's gone up a fair bit. And that, and let's see. And there was just a verbal work on Ontario Works transformation. As you know, I think it's Mohawk College has will be handling everything from now on. And there was just an update on a no decision for LPAT for a subdivision up in Huntsville. And that is my report.
Good, thank you. I'm going to call on Councillor Kelly, who has his hand up, perhaps on some observations as it relates to the district.
Just a real quick question, and that was the, I missed the beginning, the setup, the bus. The bus, is that a regular schedule or is that a regularly scheduled thing?
Let me try and find it here on the thing. I think it's 1 day a week, and that for each of those two routes, and that going through. It's just a minute now.
If we coordinate their schedule with the garbage pickup, maybe they can grab some stuff along the way.
That's a good idea.
Not sure about that.
I guess they wouldn't be wasting time.
Councillor Edwards, are you able to?
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring it up.
No, I mean, I think it's terrific. I just was curious about frequency and, I mean, especially with.
It's once a week, just a minute now.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose one could see social media announcements by the district on this.
That's right, or you can go on and find that information. It's about a 40 some odd page report. Okay, this is the route, just a minute now. So it's coming from.
Excuse me, can I help?
Yeah,
sure. Councillor Nishikawa?
Well, so the route is no different than what we had devised. So those of you that didn't know that I was on this committee for 8 years, we had this plan in place, I'm going to say 4 years ago. And we used school buses. Essentially, it's the same route once a day, you know, so it would be, again, my understanding was that they would still continue to use the school buses. So it would be after the 9 o'clock sort of start. And the last time that we tried this, in the beginning, I would say we were failures of communication yet again, but also it really isn't reaching who we think we need to reach. So what it was requiring was people to get a ride, like in a car, to go and meet the bus in many cases. And so it became very difficult for residents. So I would just suggest watch and wait and see. But that particular model and how it affects Muskoka Lakes, in my opinion, it doesn't work. We need to think something outside of the box for our own municipality. If, for instance, we decide to have an around the lakes route ourselves, I think we should be, like every other municipality is, looking for transportation issue, dealing with transportation in their own municipality. And I don't think that Muskoka Lakes should be trying to avoid that. We should be coming up with some of our own solutions. It is not a district responsibility because obviously Bracebridge has their own bus system. Other municipalities, their own bus system. I think Township Muskoka Lakes needs to develop something further.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, what I could add is Mactier to Bracebridge is Thursdays. Glen Orchard to Gravenhurst is Tuesdays, okay? They're running one from Honey Harbor to Midland Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I believe they're running a small minibus, not school buses at this time. And what they were saying is they could take 5 minutes and go and pick somebody up. And I said, that's not going to work, because coming down highway in that 118, by the time you pull off and pick somebody up, you're going to get maybe one person. So there is some issues. They are going to try it and that, but so that is it. If you need anything else, you can give me a call. I can bring it right up and then tell you. The fare is worth $3 one way and $5 return trip. And there's discounts for youth and children.
Good, thank you. Councilor Mazan has a comment.
Thank you, and through you, comment and or a question. Prior to COVID, we'd started to get a bit of momentum around having folks from the Watershed Council and other related climate and environment updates. We were starting a bit of an education process and an engagement. And I'm just wondering how we can embed within our agenda on general finance and or through the district updates an ongoing commitment to discussions around the environment from the Muskoka Watershed Council, just so that we are keeping that at the forefront.
Okay, good, thank you. We'll take that under advisement. I think there's, you know, as the new business aspect where we're getting updates from our friends on council who go that extra mile, you know, it almost occurs to me that this should be a more formal process. And I'm not suggesting it at this moment in time, but I think to your point, Councillor Mazan, this is, you know, this is a very important aspect, which is all the elements of our involvement with the district. And when we take the time we do with Manpower to send our folks there to represent this township, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a more formal reporting process. But again, that's that could be something we can discuss at least down the road. Go ahead, supplementary. Councilman Mazan.
Yes, thank you. And a supplementary, and probably getting a bit more into the specifics here, but you know, just even updates. I know that the colleagues are on the Watershed Advisory Committee, the ASH program, status updates. I know that the Watershed Council is going through a strat plan process themselves. And I just think that, like a lot of the other initiatives we're working on, it's incumbent upon us perhaps to be in this driver's seat and actually be saying these are the things that are important to us at the township. I recognize we're going through this currently in our own strategic plan. I recognize that we are talking about having expanded relationships with other forms of government in the absence of conservation authority. What we do have through the district as a Muskoka Watershed Council, well, it's not through the district, but what we do is have this body currently. And, you know, there's resources are limited everywhere. So I think I like the idea, Chair Zavitz, of perhaps creating a more formal way on our agenda to ensure that that discussion around the environment, discussion around the things that we talk about is actually given its due course on the agenda.
Good, thank you. And I guess the last word, Councilor Nishikawa. Ruth?
Thank you. It's interesting for me because I actually don't see, other than quarterly, the ability to do these types of reports. I mean, yes, all of us can become members of the Watershed Council if we really want to understand the works that they're doing and how it affects Muskoka Lakes. I don't see from, and I tried this, Susan, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way, but I sat on Watershed for our municipality as a representative. I'm not even clear who is our rep now from district. Is it the mayor? I'm not sure. But in fact, yes, it would also require, if only that member that sits on that committee from district do their update there. It to be a for our town, our staff to pull together reports when in many cases there's friends of the dead, there's account. I don't think we're on staff to put those groups, but in fact, it really just that report from the Water Council that can on. That would maybe be a quarter discussion.
Okay, good. Thank you. I see Councillor Jaglowitz has a comment and Ellen Edwards. So all of our district representatives wanted to weigh in here. I wasn't trying to start a new discussion. I'll have to give somebody the last word. So I don't know, Councillor Jaglowitz, if you have something that you think is new and relevant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, it's a kind of point of procedure, if I might, and I'm happy to do it at the end of this meeting if you want. Or would you like me to raise it now? It has to be. Pardon?
Go ahead.
Okay. In our earlier discussion, one member of council indicated they would send out a recording of some event, and I'm confused as whether that member is sending it out on his own, or is that going to be sent out through you, Mr. Chair, officially from this committee? And I think the better way would be for it to come officially from this committee. And what I would like to request then is that some material be added to it so there's a complete picture. And this goes back to one councillor asked for that. So what I would suggest being added, and I can supply you or your designate with this if you wish, the original motion that the committee at the district recommended to council, the motion that this committee sent because it hasn't been published yet, although it's available, and then the revised motion that was considered by the district. So they see all three. And then there's a fourth thing at the council meeting where I said the minutes were inaccurate. I gave a statement which was written, and I submitted it to the clerk, which will be incorporated in the minutes when they come out. So those four documents added to the video clip, and the 28 minutes of discussion is from 7:30 to 36:30, would give members a completer picture. So I wonder if how that would happen and whether that could be facilitated through an independent, through your committee or staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jaglowitz. What I'm sensing here, certainly in this room, would be a communication from our clerk, Cheryl Mortimer, which would provide all of the detail that you've outlined. I guess all of the information. Yeah, but so how do we get that? Sorry? Yeah, well, so, okay, so to your point, it would seem that it would be a staff scenario through the clerk. The CAO will work with our clerk to ensure that this information, the fulsome information, is provided. And I'm certainly comfortable with them in that role. I hope others are. If one isn't comfortable, one should put their hand up, because in terms of the chair versus staff, I think in this case, staff is in a perfect position to facilitate the supplying, if you will, of this information as it exists.
So who should I send the information I referenced to?
I would send it to Cheryl Mortimer, our clerk.
I will do that. Thank you.
Okay, you please send it. Send it to Cheryl, and we'll. Item 10B, which is community events. Are there anyone random? Anyone have any community events updates to share or shed on with this committee? Councillor Edwards, Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I have my hand up for something else. And
Sorry,
that,
go ahead.
but if it's very, very hard to take a 2 or 3 hour meeting and break it down for everyone.
Fair enough.
All the district councils, okay, you can go on YouTube and it's archived, so you can see anything if you want. If you check their agendas each week, and there's something that you're really interested in, you could watch it at that time. And that, but like I look at, and I'm sure all the other committees, if you go to Watershed, it's about a 2 or 3 hour meeting at times. If you go to Community Planning Services, it's about 2 to 3 hours, and that's so we try and condense it down. But the public, which means the councillors, could go on and check out anything they
Sure.
want to see it's
Sure they can.
archived. Okay.
Good. Okay.
And then the other thing, I was for community events. The Cherry Fox Run in Windermere this year is going to be virtual. They're asking people to go out and walk their 10K wherever they are, try and get and that donations on Facebook and online. And that, so we will not be having an actual run this year as such. That way, and it's a shame because it's the 40th anniversary of the Cherry Fox Run. And we've decided that with the COVID, it's not fair to go out to all the in that different businesses and ask for donations for our silent auction. So we will not be having that. If there are some articles that do come in, they may be doing it online. So that's all I have at this time. But anyway, and other than that, there's basically everything has been shut down due to COVID. Thank you.
Right. Point well taken. Councilor Nishikawa.
Apparently, the Legion Bala is going to have first band, I guess, of everything, and it's all good safety and all of those things. Would be on 21st, Friday the 1st. Don't know if I necessarily want to advertise it. Don't know how many people we have can come, but I'm letting you know that it's happening. Most case, anybody drives by and going, "What the heck's going on?" But anyhow, they set up to do that, and essentially for others, regions are drawing quickly during this time, aren't able to keep up with finding responsibility of running a service. And Stephen, the standard costs and without the income come, and really a shame, would be a shame in our community to have that happen, both the Port Legion and the Legion. So I hope that we look forward in the future to putting some grant monies available for those organizations, because a lot of great for the community. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And given no other hands up, that draws that to a close, and in fact leads me to read this motion. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be resolved that this meeting adjourn at 10:30.
Oh, sorry, 10:30.
10:30 a.m. and the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on September 16th, 2020 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the council chambers, municipal office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor, show of hands here. Good, thank you. I'll see you this afternoon.
Oh, just and that before you shut us up, will there be another invite coming out for this afternoon's meeting, or just
Yes,
go on?
yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Okay,
A new
make sure.
invite.
Thanks.
Watch for it. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
Cheers.